Well, hello, everybody. I'm Kirk Oatman with I'm in Control. We save energy in small and mid-sized buildings.
Thank you. And thanks for being a regular attendee now, Kirk. Appreciate it. Laura.
Hi, I'm a retired building engineer, and for fun, I run an online art gallery. And I'm involved in all kinds of activist organizations in Stanislaus County, including the environmental ones, as well as art activist organizations. It's really nice to see you, Valerie. Looking forward to this.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for being a regular attendee yourself. Sophia.
Hello, I'm Sophia Afakova. I'm a policy advocate with the Coalition for Clean Air, and we're an environmental nonprofit focused on protecting public health, improving air quality, and preventing climate change, based in Sacramento and Los Angeles.
Thank you, Sophia. All right, how about Jolene?
My name is Jolene, and I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the Modesto Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, and George is in there too. George, go for it.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. George Isaac. I'm Director of Sales for Repsco. We're a manufacturer in Riverbank.
Thank you, George. Also a solid attendee every month. Trish.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Trish Christensen, President and CEO of Modesto Chamber of Commerce, and we're really happy to have you all with us here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go right ahead and read my little speech and then introduce Valerie, our speaker. Valerie Thorson is a San Joaquin Valley Deputy Director of CalSTART. She helps medium and heavy-duty fleets who are trying to switch to electric or hydrogen fueling. Works on electrification and microgrid planning projects, runs the San Joaquin Valley Zero Emission Bus Working Group, and supports statewide outreach for the HVIP, CORE, CMO, and Energize programs in the Valley. Please welcome Valerie Thorson.
Thank you. Really appreciate the applause. Love that. You don't see that anymore in
Right.
somewhat virtual calls. And I apologize for not being there in person too. I used to live in Modesto. Now I'm in Merced, and I would have loved to drive over, except I'm out of state now traveling.
Okay.
But very happy to be here and to present to the group. So what I'd like to do, I do have some slides prepared, but before, I'd like to elaborate on CalSTART, who we are as an organization, really my role, and then go into some of the projects that we've done before, just to give you additional context, and then focus on some of those programs that Lyndon, you mentioned in the list. So I'll go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and share these, and please feel free to anyone who has questions. I may not, if I'm presenting, I may not be able to see kind of raised hands or chats, but please feel free to interject and ask your question. I'm happy to stop, because there may be a good amount of information here that is overwhelming. Okay, so let me set this at 2. Okay, so like Lyndon said, I'm the San Joaquin Valley Deputy Director at CalSTART. CalSTART is a nonprofit organization that has been focused since it was founded in the early 90s on clean transportation. We have gone through kind of a metamorphosis of being positioned in different places within the clean transportation industry. I say that because we started working with, a lab down in Pasadena in California, and testing out chassis for electric vehicles and things like that, and have really become a uniquely positioned nonprofit organization in being able to administer, millions of dollars of funding so that people have access to these technologies, whether that includes, an electric truck to carry goods, whether that includes an electric tractor, fuel cell vehicles as well, school buses, and all these things that I think we are transitioning into, so that we have cleaner transportation solutions. And so just to give you a brief overview, the way CalSTART is organized is we have different initiative areas really focused on those technologies: light duty vehicles, your cars, buses, trucks, fuels and infrastructure. So that, and to some extent, and a very little extent, marine as well, but I don't touch that in the valley. So we also have, activity areas, and the reason why the San Joaquin Valley Regional Office exists, the regional office exists is because we touch all of these areas. We are looking at infrastructure and hydrogen fueling and how that's growing in the valley, because we want to make sure that that's being done with a lot of different considerations in mind. I am really focused on the 99 and the I-5 corridor and the development of charging infrastructure and hydrogen fueling throughout those corridors, so that we have companies that for those that are ready to transition to trucks, they are going to have that infrastructure in place, right? That's always the biggest concern. Yes, I would love to have electric trucks. I don't want to have these diesel trucks anymore, but I'm worried that I won't be able to make my routes or complete them because there's no charging infrastructure or infrastructure available to me. And so those are the types of solutions that we're trying to find, primarily by being able to use these, state dollars. And my role is to be able to provide them and provide the technical assistance to folks within the entire, San Joaquin Valley, so that they know that it's available to them and can use that funding. And so it's not just going to like Amazon. And, that's, I'll give credit to Amazon for getting electric trucks, but there are others that want it that may not have as easy access to it. And if anyone hears from Amazon, great company, keep doing what you do. So the other thing I want to, just to give you a sense of what CalSTART has done in the past, sort of recent past, is we had an IKEA and TransPower project where we worked with the Air Pollution Control District to fund a yard hustler. They call them yard tractors or even yard goats, at the IKEA distribution center. We had the Bolt to College program. And so that's where we had a somewhat significant amount of funding that went to Fresno City College to provide electric vehicles for students to transport themselves to and from home. And actually that project was very successful. What was unfortunate was it ran out of funding. And so then we had to kind of pivot. And then there was also a USPS demonstration where we worked with specifically two USPS locations in Stockton and Fresno in being able to deploy electric USPS trucks. The project that's probably gotten the most attention and that you may be aware of is located actually in Modesto. It's called the Zanzaf Frito-Lay. The Frito-Lay facility within Modesto has actually replaced a good amount of their vehicles with compressed natural gas, with electric vehicles. They have they've implemented solar and storage to store that energy coming from the solar onto the site. And we have been working on project management, data collection and analysis, emissions testing as well, so that we're ensuring that those vehicles are performing like they should, and also comparing to the older vehicles, capturing those efficiencies gained and things like that. And so that this is an ongoing project. If you haven't heard of it, probably the biggest thing in the media for this project is that towards the end of the year, they will be deploying about 15, I want to say, Tesla trucks, Class 8 large Tesla electric trucks. And that's something that's been very much anticipated. So it's great that it's happening right, in our backyard in Modesto. And I think it's probably going to be the first, if not one of very few Tesla deployments that's coming up this year. Another project that we actually closed out this is more in Southern California, but it was where we worked with two, warehouses and distribution centers to replace electric trucks, to replace the forklifts, yard tractors. And then we, CalSTART, as I mentioned, have this kind of data analysis and technical analysis arm, where we have folks that are very focused on being able to measure that these vehicles are working correctly, and that they are actually more efficient than the vehicles that they had already in place. And so we want to make sure that we're not just saying like, here's an electric truck, go for it. It's really like, okay, how are we operating it now? What would optimize that operation so that you're able to have vehicles that are even better than the ones you had before. So I'd like to move into some of the programs that we administer. So for clarity, CalSTART, as I mentioned, is a nonprofit organization. And so we basically bid for these projects either from CARB or the California Energy Commission. They are funded by cap and trade dollars, and those budgets are allocated to these programs. And so we have been running some of them for some time now, and have become, have developed really robust programs to administer the funding that's coming from the state. And so this first one is the California HVIP. It's a voucher incentive program. The very short acronym has a very long name. It's the Hybrid and Zero Emission Truck and Bus Voucher Incentive Project. We've actually been running this one. This is our longest running program. It's been running since 2009. It started with some hybrid vehicles, some CNG vehicles, and it's really transitioned to electric and fuel cell or hydrogen vehicles. And so when I say vehicles, this is for trucks and buses. We're focused more on medium and heavy duty. So we're working with companies that want to start replacing some of their vehicles, that want to test out, pilot, or even want to really replace their whole fleet with these zero emission vehicles. And so the HVIP program allows people to go through this, our CaliforniaHVIP.org website, go see the eligible vehicles, which, like I said, are more on the medium and heavy duty side, ranging everything from a small bus that can be used from a transit agency, or a small company that has, some, let's say, passenger van movement within a city, all the way to getting kind of a Class 8 tractor trailer or a straight truck that is going to support business operations and movement of goods. And so how the HVIP program works is that you choose a vehicle. We have a list of approved dealers that have gone through training. Then you would essentially purchase the vehicle at the dealer, and the money, the incentive voucher, is applied at the purchase. So it's not something that you have to go to the district and get a rebate, or you have to get a rebate somewhere else. The money is applied right there at the purchase. So that's something where the program was purposefully designed to make it easier for people to get those savings immediately. So since 2009, the HVIP program has gone through many rounds of where that funding was deployed. And so what ends up happening is that those dealers, when that money is available, those dealers come to us and we reimburse them. And so we still actually have funding available as of, I want to say a couple weeks ago, we had $25 million still for any standard purchases. I won't go into it too much because we're going to go into other programs, but the HVIP program actually has set-asides. And that basically means that of the, for example, 400 million that is being deployed at once, 25 of that specifically is going to drayage trucks, because that's there is a large number of drayage trucks operating within the state that are needing that funding. Another set aside, for example, would be for school buses that are in small air districts that have that are in disadvantaged communities that have additional needs, and so they get money set aside for them, and for public transit as well. If you're all in Modesto, actually what previously used to be Modesto Area Express has actually gone through the HVIP program and gotten some vehicles as well. Any questions on HVIP? Okay, sounds good. And I'll take questions at the end as well. So HVIP, if HVIP is a program that has funding for vehicles, then Energize is kind of a sister program that has funding for infrastructure. And that means that Energize is actually a newer program. It started last year. And so up until this point, folks that had gotten zero emission vehicles had to go out to get contracts in place for infrastructure companies to come build chargers or build a fueling station. And they can still do that, but Energize actually provides an incentive for people to be able to lower the cost of those deployments, I guess. So the first round of Energize provided $70 million, and you would think, at least to me, if you think of $69 million, that's a lot of money, right? And then you say, okay, well, that can probably fund maybe 10 hydrogen fueling stations. So it gets actually really interesting. Not necessarily 10, you could do more with that, but it gets to the point of like trying to install charging infrastructure when you have a fleet of 50 vehicles can get really expensive. So this program is really there to help you along the way. There is an application process to this program, and there are different what we call funding lanes that were established to help people that are more ready to go and to just buy the infrastructure. They just have the money in hand and really would like to have those savings applied. So that would be, the EV fast track funding lane. But if you are a transit agency or a nonprofit and you need more technical assistance, you need help, you're located potentially in a disadvantaged community, which as you may or may not know, there's a large concentration of disadvantaged communities in San Joaquin Valley just because of the way we sit in kind of this pollution bowl. We have these communities that are negatively impacted by pollution and emissions. And so to the extent that you are in a disadvantaged community and are a smaller kind of mom and pop shop, you can go through the EV Jumpstart funding lane. And so it's, the potentially bigger companies or more companies that have higher profits are maybe more ready to go in the EV fast lane, but the EV Jumpstart lane is set up to help those that maybe need a little bit more help, but still can get the same amount of funding. So that's why there's a differentiation between these lanes. Then there's the hydrogen lane as well, specifically focused on building a hydrogen fueling station and providing funding for that. I'll go briefly over this slide, but this is if you go to the Energize website, there's something called the Infrastructure Readiness Center that CalSTAR has developed. And that's for us to be able to provide resources and help to folks that want to bring in infrastructure and aren't necessarily ready or know where to start. And so there are some tools there. There's like a funding finder. There's something called Infrastructure Insights, which actually tells you, if you have a specific fleet with this many trucks, and these are maybe potentially your infrastructure needs. So it kind of walks you through this online process that'll help you as you're thinking of transitioning your vehicles over to zero emission. I'll provide this slide deck to be distributed to everyone, but I am providing, numbers, emails, in case there's any interest in any of these specific programs. The last program I'd like to share, and this one is very kind of near and dear to my heart, and could be very impactful for the San Joaquin Valley specifically, is because this California Core, or California Clean Off-Road Equipment, is focused on the deployment of just that clean off-road equipment. So that's zero emission off-road equipment. So if you don't have a sense of what that could be, That's anything from a forklift, which is operated at any sort of manufacturing site, any warehouse, any of which we have many of those in the Valley and also growing, right? We have terminal tractors as well, transport refrigerator units that are used widely because we have a lot of companies that are transporting goods, fruits, vegetables, and use these transport refrigerator units. And then there are also some rail and some airport and container handling equipment and kind of general off-road equipment that isn't necessarily, and it's mainly just off-road because you don't see it on road. These are at facilities kind of doing day-to-day operations and helping companies depending on what their need is. So this was these are just a glimpse of last year's funding and how many vouchers were requested. This program operates similarly to HVIP in the sense that you have, you're able to get a voucher and you get certain savings. A forklift voucher could have savings, and please don't quote me on this, I need to check the actual value, but a forklift voucher can be $20,000. And then if you buy an electric or zero emission or, you know, fuel cell forklift, you would get $20,000 off that purchase. And so that's where the vouchers come in. And when you see $74 million project, that's $74 million that have been dispersed in vouchers throughout the state of California. So actually this year we had $195 million allocated for equipment this year, and it included agriculture and construction, which are two big industries within the San Joaquin Valley. So I'm working on doing some coalition building, sharing this program so that those that are within the ag industry or the construction industry know that this is available to them, to the extent that there's interest in being able to look at ag tractors, which are used widely throughout the valley, and then construction equipment. There's various kinds. I think the construction, the funding allotted to the construction industry was actually gone the first day that the program opened. And I believe there's still funding available in the agriculture. But then there's also another new and potentially smaller, but can have a bigger impact and from an emission standpoint, it's landscaping equipment. If you're thinking of anything from a lawnmower to I forget the name, but like weed whackers and things like that. Those all can be electric as well. And so there are smaller vouchers for landscaping companies, individuals that have their own businesses that want to be able to have these equipment, but it does tend to be more expensive than the diesel or gasoline equivalent. And so this program allows them to be able to save that money. So CORE is actually open as well. They still have $30 million in voucher funds. I think usually HVIP has actually been, the first program for vehicles has actually been expended. Those vouchers have been expended the day that the program opens, which basically means that all those purchases were made ahead of time. And then the dealers all came to the HVIP program to us and said, okay, we need 100% of that money back, right? And so we provide them those vouchers. And I think there's still some money. HVIP got a good amount of funding this year. And so there is still money, some funds left over. And the same for CORE, because we have these new categories and there are folks that are still learning about CORE, we still have funding available. So that's really great to be able to share and say, you know, there is opportunity to get these savings for those that are interested in this type of equipment. So I did put the two programs here. I can add CORE as well. Might have gone off slide or something, but I'll add core as well as here on this slide. That way you have that information, and you're welcome to distribute it to anyone that you think would be interested in this information, particular for these programs. But what I will do is I actually stop sharing, maybe take some questions and have an open discussion on what CalSTART does, the type of projects that we manage. And as always, happy to follow up with anyone one-on-one afterward as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Appreciate it. This is the time for questions. Does anybody have any questions regarding this?
I have a question. I'm Mike Meridian. And what's the relationship to the electrical grid? Because it looks like 2035, 13 years from now, we're going to be all vehicle sales. And I'm assuming they're going to do something in the off-road and some of those other areas. What are we going to do? We just had rolling blackouts last week in California. What are we doing about providing a proper electric grid? And then the other thing I have heard that we don't have the chemical compounds necessary to sell 2 million regular vehicles, all these other vehicles that we're requiring people to have. How are we going to deal with those two issues?
I think those are very fair points. I mean, they do come up in our industry a lot because they're very relevant for California specifically with the grid capacity issues. That's something that the California Energy Commission is trying to build capacity to be able to upgrade the grid, put the right transformers in place, put the right equipment in place, and that's going to take some time too. I think for me to sit here and tell everyone we can all have zero emission vehicles tomorrow. Yeah, sure, we can buy them. Maybe they're expensive, but okay, we can buy them, but we need to be able to your point, have a grid that's going to be able to sustain all of that. So I think that's still something that's in progress, and it's going to progress hopefully sustainably at the same rate that we are adopting these vehicles. The other thing that we work on at CalSTART, and we're working on this at the city level and to an extent at the facility level as well, is that the building capacity within microgrids. And so if you haven't, I don't know, Michael, if you've heard of microgrids before, from that Frito-Lay project with Modesto, what benefits they're getting from building solar and storage is that they're not having to use up the grid energy, because they have their energy that's being stored from the solar system that they implemented. At the same time, I'm working with the city within the San Joaquin Valley to design a microgrid for multiple areas in the city with I believe it's a 72-hour resilience period. That basically means that if there are specific, let's say, municipal fleets or school bus fleets or even transit fleets within that city that actually need to be mobilized when we do have some sort of blackout that lasts more than 5-10 minutes, then we are actually building the capacity and designing those assets, those solar and energy assets throughout the city, so that they know that if the schools get out, kids got to go home, then those school buses are ready to go and mobilized for that certain amount of time, right? For that 72-hour resiliency period. And so those are the types of solutions that we're also thinking through, where we're trying to take advantage of the fact that we can implement solar or other renewable energy options, so that we're not solely focused on a grid that needs to be updated.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for Valerie?
Yeah, I've got a couple, if that's okay.
We have time. Yeah.
All right. So I have two kinds of questions, and actually your comment just now leads into one of them. Are all of these programs available for city and county government entities?
Yes.
Okay. Because a lot of our customers are cities and counties, and it's really an issue getting particularly the infrastructure in place. So then that leads to my other question. So like I said, we focus on smaller commercial buildings, less than 60,000 square feet, which are owned by some combination of portfolios like cities, counties, and companies, and more individual owners. Can you tell me, I was really interested in the ease of use of your, sounds like, website and the assistance you provide. That's pretty amazing for these programs. Most programs aren't really thinking about the person who doesn't know what the heck they're doing. But
Right.
if I could just ask from a really practical point of view, again, whether you're talking about small buildings, part of a city, maybe where the city is not as experienced, or an individual owner of a 50,000 square foot mixed office, warehousing, manufacturing facility, how practical is it from both an application and a payback point of view? And that's part of the problem and what we end up having questions about is charging infrastructure. So it would be nice if they could, yes, get an electric delivery vehicle or something, but also these buildings have employees and visitors where, essentially lower amperage of charging would be sensible and usable by them. But it's not clear that it's practical on an ongoing basis with the available vendors to actually install something in that building because it might not get used enough. Sorry, that was a long question, but I think you get the idea.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I see your point too, because if you're thinking of a buyback, if you think on the vehicle side, right, you need to be able to operate that vehicle pretty consistently to be able to get the funding back from, if you're getting an electric, like let's say a small delivery truck, right, or
Right.
a step van or something like that. Those tend to be, of course, less expensive than if you were to get kind of a Class 8 big tractor. But
Right.
the use case is really going to depend on that time of that cost, but where you see that cost benefit. And so that buyback period could be 5 years, it could be 10. And then if you really don't use the truck at all, I mean, it could be like 13, 15, which honestly, to a lot of companies doesn't seem like a sensible decision, right?
They
And
just
right, yeah, and I can understand that. I think the point of these programs is to lower that cost so that you have now, a shorter time period. To your point on the charging infrastructure side, it's not so much the use case, it's really just that high capital cost. And then because what you're paying in electricity, we have found from the analysis that we've done, you are gaining a lot of that money back from what you're saving in fuel, especially now. Especially now. So, and you can also say, fuel is volatile, right? So it's gonna go up and down. But at the end of the day, over a 10-year period, you're gonna have substantial savings from that fuel savings that can really capture that capital investment for the infrastructure and more. And so depending on the reason that these programs are designed the way they are is because there's more funding allocated to those that are more in need. So when I mentioned disadvantaged communities, they actually receive $750,000 for charging infrastructure, up to $750,000 for charging infrastructure, versus like the fast track folks that I think get 500. So that's where I think cities that have lower funds and maybe less competitive when they're going against, someone else that has that can take on more risk, end up winning in that case, right? Because they get more funding and they can put that infrastructure in place. And so I think there is the good thing with the Energize program is that they don't say they'll say we pay either 75% of the costs up to that $750,000. And so you're really on the hook for only 25% of that, which is something that may be a smart investment at this time, right? Just depending on what company it is and all of that. So I think there is very much opportunity to talk further if there are specific places or cities or, you know, that or folks that are interested. I will say I wish I could have presented last month because our EV Jumpstart is actually open this month, the application, but it'll open again hopefully next year. And that way we can keep these conversations going in case there are people that want to apply, or, you know, companies or even municipalities. They should really try and pursue that funding should they be ready.
A very quick question that came out of that. So there are numerous companies who will install charging infrastructure at a building. They pay the capital cost, and then they split profits, costs, and so forth with the owner of the building. Are these programs and rebates and incentives available to those companies when they install infrastructure, but essentially are leasing it?
Yeah, so I think those are what we call charging as a service, right? So
That
company
sounds-
A
yeah,
comes
that
in
sounds
and says like, yeah, we'll build it out, but we get basically you pay us a monthly cost, for example, and
or split cost profits and so on.
yeah. I think there's definitely a possibility for that because we do have in the Energize program, there are approved vendors. And so we actually look at an approved vendor list, and that vendor list that vendor is actually in the application as well. So the funding would then be potentially split between those two applicants, or maybe like an applicant and a sub-applicant. And it would, I guess it would depend on what that agreement is between those two entities, how that funding gets then spent. But I think the eligibility is more around like the infrastructure has to be put in place and operated by someone for a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the types of things that we look at.
Okay, yeah, no, that's really interesting. And if the base agreement for that vendor, that supplier, didn't allow for that, if they were to be able to create an alternate agreement that allowed these incentives to pay for 75% of the upfront cost, that they'd sell more, and the owners would be more likely to do it. So that's a very, very interesting point. I'll be talking about that with some of our customers and partners. Thanks, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And if you need, you know, to chat with our team, we have a whole team for the Energize program. Any of them, I'll put my email in the chat as well. I said I'll share the slides, but I'll put my email in the chat as well, just in case you want to just email me directly, and I can get you connected with any of those folks.
Great, thanks a lot.
Yeah, and there are some infrastructure heavy technical folks that if there are some technical questions, I would defer to them because there's some certain things that I don't tackle, like there's so many things. There's like codes and you know, specific things within the infrastructure itself and how it's designed and all this stuff, and so I don't touch that.
Thank you, Valerie. Is there any other questions before we wrap up? I really appreciate this presentation, Valerie. This is exactly the type of presentation and discussion we set this green team up for. This is an absolute great example of why we're here, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy to connect after as well if there are any questions, and always just happy to better understand the needs of the Valley. I think it's such a large landmass with all these companies that could benefit from these programs, but sometimes there are some things they need additional help with, and so that's what CalStart's here for, is to provide that assistance as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Another round of applause. Thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you.
We love the benefit of doing these hybrid, we call them hybrid meetings, where you're a perfect example, and so am I, as we couldn't be there in person, but we can still have a good discussion and a good presentation, and we plan on continuing this, so we appreciate that. We usually wrap up with some announcements, but I want to give one attendee a chance to introduce themselves. They're under the tagline here is Use One ACF. If you can introduce yourself real quick, that would be appreciated. Okay, maybe they're not around. Who knows? We usually give this portion to anyone that has anything that they would like to announce that's going on in the community, something that you feel is relevant to share. Now is your moment.
Go ahead, Laura.
Laura, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. I am on the Stanislaus County Arts Council Board, and with two other arts councils, Tuolumne and Merced, we went after and received $4.23 million in grants for the arts. And this grant is specifically directed at 4 things. And one of them is dealing with the environment and all of the issues in California dealing with the environment. And it's for artists to get the word out. And so I kind of think this group should know about that and help us participate in distributing the funds here. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Now is your moment. I'll remind you that we're here the 3rd Thursday of every month, and we'll be back in October and November. We appreciate any feedback, any suggestions, and any potential future presentations as well.
And please keep informing people that we're here to green certify businesses, regardless of business or industry. We are the county-wide program provider of the California Green Business Network certification program. So,
and how many, Jolene will know the answer to this, putting her on the spot, but how many have we certified this year alone?
9.
9. So there you go. Look at that. And we want to do more. And we're
what, 30 registered and
41.
41 registered. And it's a big, for some people.
It's a process. Just because we've certified 9, there's another couple of dozen working on it, which is important. And there's no timeline. There's no deadline, I should say. So some are quicker than others. And I know Jolene will appreciate that some out there are still working on their list as well. And so so we're working on it, and we need to do that. And so we want to spread the room, spread the word that companies out there to get green certified and continue that process. All right, does anybody else have anything else to say before we adjourn for October? It's the last meeting of the summer. It already feels like fall a little bit. Hopefully that trend continues, and we will see you in October. Thank you for attending. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.